Well, here we are, Michael, discussing the Oscar Best Picture nominees from 2023, at least the 6 we have not reviewed so far on this channel. But firstly, we are going to go into the 2024 winners in all categories. Of course, we did our prediction video about a week ago for the 2024 Oscars. And as you can see on the screen right now, because Michael's put a graphic up with all the winners and losers, all the predictions that we got right and got wrong. As you can see, I managed to get 12 out of 15, Michael 11 out of 15, but of course the major story from our predictions video was we predicted all the same guesses, the films and actors, apart from one, which was Best Production Design. And who won that, Michael?
You won it. I had a moment where I thought to myself, oh gosh, I wish I'd gone for the right answer, but I thought, no, that would make the video even worse. So, the good news is I don't even have to feel bad about the fact that I was wrong, because if I'd been right, that would have been a real disaster. We would have had all the same answers.
Yeah, so as you can see, overall I got 17 out of 20 points, and you only got 15 out of 20.
Which is the same as I did last time.
Yeah, by the way, this is my best ever year. 17 out of 20 points, so 85% of possible points. So yeah, I'm getting better at this, Michael. Or are the Oscars becoming more predictable? I'm not sure. But of course, there was one big talking point from the night. Which was
the Ken song.
Not the Ken song, because that was quite good. Should have won Best Song. Of course, we both thought Lily Gladstone would win Best Actress.
Yes.
She did not, though. It was Emma Stone instead. I think a lot of people expected Lily Gladstone to win it, so when it was Emma Stone, it was like, wow.
Yeah, I was surprised. I guess I thought that the Oscars were woke. But it turns out, of course, that they aren't woke, because they gave, Emma Stone, the beautiful Aryan actress, Best Actor, and of course they nominated a film that's all about how great it is to murder Japanese people for Best Picture.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so obviously Oppenheimer won, as you've alluded to, which wasn't a surprise. So yeah, no, it was a decent Oscars. I enjoyed it. Barbie got fucked over, which I liked. But yeah, so did Martin Scorsese, once again.
And as for what we're going to be doing this week, my eyes see we're going to be doing an Oscars roundup video.
There we go.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke, and this week we are celebrating the erstwhile Oscars by looking at the films that were nominated for Best Picture at last year's Oscars. And those films, we're probably just going to go through them as we do them, because I'll list them all off now. We're going to be doing Tar, Banshees, Fabelmans, Triangle of Sadness, Women Talking, and All Quiet on the Western Front. So, Luke, I guess, should we just get started on Tar right away?
Yeah, Tar. So I think we're going to limit ourselves, Michael, to how much we talk about these movies compared to normal, of course, starting with Tar. And yeah, this is a 2022 psychological drama film written and directed by Todd Field. Cate Blanchett, of course, stars as Lydia Tarr. I'm not going to go through everybody else who's in the cast. The release date was October the 7th, 2022 in the United States. And Michael, can you tell me the budget and the box office quickly?
All right, I'm just going to say real quick, 30 million.
I said box office as well, but the budget is 25.
Okay, cool. And the box office was 40 million. 40
million? Again, decent guess, because it was 29.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so anyway, Michael, let's get into Tar. Did you like Tar?
It was okay. My big criticism of it right out of the gate is that I felt like it had so many dialogue scenes that I was kind of like, I don't really know if I can fully endorse this as a use of the visual element of film as a medium. Like, one of my problems is, like, the film's kind of, there were obviously themes in it, but I felt like the amount of times you just had characters sitting down talking to each other kind of detracted from how impressed I was by what the film was able to do, because so much of what it was able to do was just by having characters talking to each other.
Yeah.
Something called talk.
Okay, the thing is, I initially didn't like it as much, because the thing is, those dialogue scenes, I'm fine with that in a movie. I was kind of interested by how the movie starts, because it is rather unusual with these long dialogue scenes, but I just couldn't understand what that bitch was saying. Like, in terms of all the stuff to do with conducting, I was like...
Oh, yeah, like, we don't really have a frame of reference for the music,
Yeah, exactly. I was like, all this stuff about conducting, I'm like, this is well over my head. But then...
Yeah, I appreciate that you called her a bitch because, of course, of that moment where she called you out for your identity politics interfering with which conductors you like.
Yeah. And the thing is, of course, she is a predator, so I can call her that.
Yes.
Yeah, but the thing is, of course, you know, that initially, to me, it basically might have, it should have been in a foreign language. It might as well have been. But then having, because I was interested in this movie. It was a very interesting movie to me. It wasn't a normal movie, I could tell. And so then I went back and, well, I didn't go back. I watched some YouTube videos on Tar, and it explained really what was going on in those dialogue scenes. And allowed myself, a plebeian who knows nothing about conducting, to understand the points she was making. And basically, the conclusion is, from those opening scenes, Tar is a massive hypocrite, and she is a control freak, and she will say whatever she wants to say at any time, basically, to, you know, well, yeah, to basically win the argument.
Oh, I see. So wait, now can I clarify? Are you suggesting that there's kind of an interface between what the film says about the art of conducting and the way that Tar herself behaves?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Ah.
Yeah. So the conductor controls everything.
Yes.
You know, supposedly, of course. They, you know, I guess you could liken it honestly to a football manager. That's what kept going around in my head. So you control everything basically, and yes, Tar always needs to be in control. In terms of the, the conversation with the student who she says, "Oh, you shouldn't focus on identity politics." Basically, she does focus on identity politics at other points in the movie. Just basically whatever, she has no values necessarily. She has no artistic intent either. She is kind of...
She's vacuous.
Yeah, again, vacuous. She's just after power, basically. And she then, of course, abuses that power. So that's the thing. Like, initially, you're like, okay, this is a bit of a weird movie. And then if you look into it further, you're like, oh, this is actually really smart. And I love that when you initially see a movie, and then you're like, okay, well, that was a bit weird. And then you watch it again with new context. And I'm like, I get it now. And yeah, again, I wish I knew more about conducting so I could understand what she was saying. But I think that's what the movie encourages you to do. It encourages you to be confused. Honestly, most people would have been confused, like, what the fuck's going on? And then, because that's the power that she has. Because who the fuck knows about conducting? Like, who the
she's blagging. Is that the expression?
Well, she's not necessarily blagging, but she kind of is. She's just again, you have to watch these videos, which I can't,
No, yeah, I understand. Yeah, maybe I will seek out these videos myself. I mean, I will say I can understand that there would be a kind of parallel between the fact that the conductor obviously controls what's going on, kind of, if you like, controls the narrative of the music, and the way that she kind of controls other people. That does make sense.
Yes. And again, you watch that opening interview, it seems kind of normal, and then what happens throughout the movie kind of eviscerates what she says in that interview. And I have to think Todd Field, the director, knew a lot about conducting, or hired some good people who knew a lot, because really you can pick apart everything that she's saying, so deliberately. So yeah, it is quite smart. But anyway, let's get into the plot. So renowned musician Lydia Tarr is days away from recording the symphony that will elevate her career. However, Lydia's elaborate facade begins to unravel, revealing dirty secrets and the corrosive nature of power. And that's what this movie inherently is about. It takes down Lydia Tarr, who is not a real person, of course.
Yes.
I guess it takes down people like her who pontificate and think they're so, know everything and are so smart and so, powerful, etc. But yeah, it is also mainly about how just people abuse power, and power necessarily is not a good thing if it's concentrated in one person, like a conductor who has supreme power over all these artists, of course. So yeah, it's good that this was done. This case study of how power can corrupt. It was Todd Field chose the conductor as the occupation. It makes the most sense, right?
No, yeah. I 100% do. Kind of for the reasons you already said about how they're controlling the music. Yeah, makes sense.
So let's talk about when Lydia holds a masterclass at Juilliard. When she challenges a student named Max, who dismisses composer Bach.
Yeah, so this is like the scene. Like, this is a significant scene because obviously it was interpreted through a political lens. I mean, it is a political scene. What's your immediate kind of, because I guess like the obvious thing about it is that a lot of people are saying like, haha, look at Tar, own this liberal snowflake.
Yes, again.
But of course Tar is not a good person.
Yeah, again, well, yeah, that's the veneer of it. Which again, this movie is deeper. It's very deep, which I like. It's not shallow at all like some other movies we will review in this review, which are very shallow and obvious. This is not. And so initially, the reason why Tar suspends, so Max is composing, why she stops Max composing is because she doesn't understand the music that Max is playing, because
I see.
she's never heard it before. So, like, immediately from her perspective, it's like, oh, wow, okay, I don't have control over the situation. I have no knowledge of this piece of music. Because, she comes up to him and says, isn't it great to play new music? And basically she just, like, kind of wastes everyone's time for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, just, again, like, she, if you think, like, again, if you really watch it back, you think about what she's saying, it's just, like, not that, she's just not teaching the kids anything, really. It's just kind of, oh, yeah, you gotta know what you got to feel what you're playing or whatever. The music's got to mean something, basically. And she's using, I guess, large words, and she's very eloquent, but essentially that's what she's saying. And she's
bloviating.
Yeah, I guess you could say in this scene she is blagging.
Yes,
that is what she's doing. And then again, I think there's another comparison of her being a hypocrite. At one point she does, she says, oh, you should put the art before the artist. But at another point, then she basically, while making a point against an artist, says, no, you can't put the art before the artist. I think she was talking about Marler and what his intent was, and basically in the initial interview. And the point is, it's like, okay, like she said, you have to look into his life to find out what his intent was.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. She using your knowledge of the artist in order to interpret their music. Yeah, yes. She does say that, yeah.
But when it comes to Bach, no, you shouldn't do that. You understand?
Yeah.
Again,
I do completely. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, again, so that's the hypocrisy there. So yeah, again, it's great. You look into this movie a bit deeper, and it's like, oh, there's so much here, and it's great when an initial viewing, you can go back and watch the movie again, and it gets like better almost. Again, and you would have to see all of this that I'm trying to describe. So of course, let's go on to the grooming element of the movie. So Lydia spots Olga Metakina, whatever. She changes her scorecard to ensure Olga a spot in the orchestra and grant her a soloist position in the companion piece. So again, she's manipulating things.
The interesting thing, I wanted to say something about like the Olga dynamic, because I thought it was kind of interesting. Olga is quite dismissive about conductors. Like if you remember, they have that lunch together. And I hope I'm not being Slavic racist here, or I'm just confusing different people. I think I'm right. They have the lunch together, and she's like, "Oh, you were playing the violin, blah blah blah." And she says, "Oh, I saw that so and so was composing, right?" And then Olga's like, "I don't pay attention to composers." Like, kind of almost seems dismissive about composing.
Yeah.
And at first I was thinking, like, oh, is Tar going to be really kind of angry and triggered like an SJW snowflake about the fact she doesn't care about composers? But of course, it's almost the opposite. And I was thinking, I feel like that makes sense though, because I imagine that if Tar's kind of got a bit of a, is a narcissist, and I think that's a very fair assessment to make, probably the kind of person who would actually want to win someone over and manipulate someone because... Yeah. So like that was something that was kind of my interpretation of that. I don't know if you remember that scene.
I do. But the thing is, my interpretation of it is a bit different. It's like, because, well, it's just that she obviously wants to sleep with Olga. She finds her attractive. Yes. So if like Max...
Who wouldn't?
If Max, the student who she said, oh, you're being such a snowflake or whatever, had said something like that, of course, he is a composer. But anyway, someone who she wasn't attracted, she would have,
I see. So it's just another example of it being kind of superficial about personalities versus,
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah, no, I find you attractive. So even though you're a musician, who wants to study, not study, be in this Berlin Philharmonic, which is prestigious, of course, if you want to be in here, right? And therefore it's a position which has a lot of acclaim. So for someone to say, oh yeah, I don't really care about composing to the composer of the Berlin Philharmonic, that wouldn't go down well. But again, oh, she's attractive, I want to sleep with her. Oh, great, fine then. Doesn't matter. You can get in, and not just that. You are gonna be able to be the solo celloist for the companion piece as well. Not only that, and I like how she gives the other celloist a few days to practice as well. She says, "We'll hold auditions. How about on Monday?" And it's like, oh yeah, that's probably like in like 3 days' time. So it gives her so little time to practice.
I 100% agree. Like the grooming aspect, and obviously it's something that's relevant. Harvey Weinstein, famous Oscar guy. So that's kind of funny that the Oscars were like, approving of it. Maybe this was their atonement of sorts. They're like, but also it's kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, those opera conductors, they're the real problem.
Yeah. So Lydia is haunted by sensitivity to sound, vivid nightmares, hallucinations, pain, and patterned scribbles resembling those Krista once made. So again, Krista, of course, is the girl that she groomed and then basically blacklisted. And yeah, if you throughout the movie, again, this is good. She's haunted by the ghost of Krista,
Ghost of Krista Past.
At one point, we hear screams in the park, and at another point, we see actually ghosts appear in the background, which you probably didn't notice.
I think I did notice.
Oh, good.
I think I did notice some ghosts appear.
Yeah.
Or something where I was like, oh, is that like a... Because, okay, maybe I'm wrong, though, because I feel like I remember seeing kind of like a black silhouette.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, not a black... Maybe a black... Well, that... Are you thinking of a dog?
No.
So I
don't think so.
There's one point where she's at her bookshelf, and in the background you can see a ghost, basically.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I think this is it. I can't really remember the exact visual, but I do remember like a moment where she's kind of walking around her house.
It's not
and
dark,
you see
though.
something. It's not dark.
No.
Okay. Well,
And
maybe I am just combining, because I do know what you're thinking about with the dog, where she sees the dog in the alleyway and like it's like a shadow thing. It could be that I'm just combining those two things in my head, because I do remember seeing some kind of humanoid-looking figure and being like, oh, that's a bit creepy.
There is another point where she is in her bed and it's dark, but this ghost then is sitting at a chair at the end of her bed, essentially.
Ooh, it could be that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not... You said it's a bookshelf, and then, no, it's in her...
You know what? Look, all I'm going to say is that I remember one moment where I was like, oh, that's kind of like creepy. I remember like a moment where I was like, oh, that's creepy. And I think it was to do with, a figure being visible.
Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, again, that's obvious again, which you may not have caught the first time you saw it, but looking back, oh, yeah, that's Krista. That's what's obvious about it. So, an edited cell phone video of Lydia's Juilliard class goes viral, and an article accusing her of sexual predation appears in the New York Post. So yeah, she uses her position to be a sexual predator. Despite I love how like the industry, she's in, like it's class and pomposity, and she's just still using this position to groom like other people. I love that. Power corrupts, and yeah, even this woman who again is the head of the Berlin Philharmonic, this prestigious organization, even she can be a predator. And of course, even a woman can be a predator. Even a lesbian woman can be a predator. But
it's not all straight men, and that's the lesson I think we all
it's about power. Yeah,
I know. Yeah,
so the thing is, Todd Field initially didn't want to make Tar a woman, but then he changed the gender, so now she is a woman, of course, in the movie, and I think that was brilliant. Because, again, if it was a man, it would be kind of by the numbers almost. Yeah, but now it's a woman. Okay, this is a bit different. And again, lesbian women often, don't... you don't have these scandals featuring lesbian women.
Yeah.
It's often, men, obviously. But yeah, I think this movie is key because, again, it's not about men or women. It's about power and how, of course, power can be corrupted. And, the old mentor that she has lunch with a couple of times.
Oh, yeah, him.
Yeah, I love when she brings up, that, and his first reaction is, oh, well, if they want to complain, it's too late now. Like, the implication is, oh, yeah, he did do some stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, it's quite a funny movie as well, those moments. It's funny as well. It's very dry. The humor is very dry, sure. So, yeah, she sneaks into a live recording she was supposed to be a conductor of, and, yeah, then she tackles her replacement. And yeah, basically, then she finds work in the Philippines. Again, she's gone off the deep end. And yeah, obviously, she wants a massage right at the end of the movie.
Yes, this is a scene.
Yeah, and then she's sent to a brothel. And this young woman, or these young women, have numbers on their robes, which, of course, one of them is number 5. That's the Fifth Symphony. That's Mahler's Fifth Symphony that she was meant to conduct. There's a very obvious connection there. And the girl is sitting in the exact same spot Olga was as well. Again, I like that because obviously the parallels there. Then she runs out and throws up. So that could be like her conscience appearing, basically.
It does seem like she's kind of aware of what she did in some way.
Yeah, she's finally reckoning with what she has done. Like it's spelled out for her, really, right there. And yeah, so she conducts the score for the video game series Monster Hunter afterwards, and yeah, she has fallen and. Yeah, she is a monster who has been hunted, of course. You could say that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was thinking that. Like when you said it was called Monster Hunter, I was like, oh, now that's what they call ironic.
Yeah. Exactly. And of course, this for her is incredibly embarrassing. This is,
that's a fall from grace.
A fall from grace, yes, indeed, yes. So
but the good news is now she's in the the gaming world. She's far from any place where people are toxic and manipulate and abuse women.
Yeah. So there you go. A final joke to end the movie on. Look at what she's doing. I love the pan to the cosplayers. That's very funny. So now, because again, she's you can tell she's got another job. So she's in the Philippines doing this job. and then it's then it's fucking
Yeah,
months.
you realise it's not a particularly dignified job.
No, it's not. No, it's great. It's great stuff. So yeah, overall, I'm giving this a 9 out of 10, Michael. I found it very interesting, fascinating, and yeah, this is one of the best movies of 2022. And yeah, it is enticing, and Kate Blanchett gives a great performance as well. So yeah, what are you going to give it out of 10?
Right. Now, I do need to preface this by saying that I was not privy to these, this, sophisticated operatic orchestral connection, composer thing, all of that. So I don't think I enjoyed the movie on the same level that you did. And, I do think this is a movie that I would like to see again. I'm only giving it a low 7 based on the fact that I didn't know that information. And like I say, kind of my initial criticism, I was like, while there was clearly some thematic stuff there, my issue with it is I was like, oh, they're just talking. And of course, from my perspective, I was like, well, the talking, it didn't seem necessarily that deep. So that's kind of why I've only given it a low 7. But yeah, I suspect based on what you said, there could be more to discover, and I might find out I like it more later on.
Yeah, that's the thing. Initially, I felt the same, but I did feel like there's something weird about this movie. Like there's something going on here. So that's when I went and looked it up, because it was...
You did some boning up.
Yeah, because it was very unusual. And then you watch back those scenes and it just, Todd Field has done something great here. So let's...
Yes, your boning paid dividends, unlike it did for Tar.
Exactly. So what are we talking about next, Michael?
Next we are doing The Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah, so it's a 2022 black tragicomedy film, directed, written and co-produced by Martin McDonagh. Of course, it stars Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, Kerry Condon, Barry Keoghan. The budget, it was released on the 21st of October 2022 in the UK and US. The budget, Michael,
was 25 million.
It was only 20, but it's a decent guess. What about the box office?
The box office was 45 million.
Decent guess, 52. Was that the exact same you went for Tar?
No, actually, I think I went down to 40 for Tar, but I was suspecting this movie cost less and made more. That was my theory.
Okay, did you like The Banshees of Inisherin?
I really liked this movie.
Of course you did.
I'm, for some reason, I'm a Martin McDonagh guy. I don't know. I was trying to come up with a little saying for it. This movie, it's right up my alley. It's kind of weird and awkwardly comedic, but kind of dark, and is sort of an open-ended, ambiguous exploration of some kind of thematic concepts, which I like. And also, you can't fault the directing and all that kind of stuff, cinematography, etc. Oh, and I think Colin, the two performances, Colin Firth, very good. What did you think, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, I did like it somewhat. It wasn't bad. But that kind of vibe, that weird vibe with there's some comic relief characters. There's some awkward, funny dialogue and people doing weird things. And everything's quite quirky but charming. Yeah. No, I'm like, yeah.
You find it tedious?
Somewhat tedious, yeah, somewhat, but not as that tedious, because the thing is, people really like this, and I'm like, it's fine. We'll get into it now. So, two lifelong friends find themselves at an impasse when one abruptly ends their relationship, with alarming consequences for both of them. Again, it's a fun premise. And there is some comparisons to the Irish Civil War, of course.
Yes, I was going to say that's something. I will say that's something where when I first noticed it, I was like, oh, that's kind of like a subtle parallel. When then they mentioned
really
it several. Yeah, yes. What I was going to say is when they first mentioned it, literally when they just kind of casually said oh, is there any news? Just the Civil War. But then they mentioned it at several points later on. I was like, okay, this is getting less subtle. So that was kind of my attitude towards it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have something to say about just the overall plot, because I came up with a new term for it.
Go on.
I used the phrase mundane cosmic horror. And what I mean by that is it's the same principles of cosmic horror, of there just being something completely inscrutable that's totally beyond your control, but it's about something, it's just a mundane everyday thing where it's you've just got this random guy who just out of nowhere decides to stop being friends with you. And I was thinking, functionally in terms of plot, it's the same as those weird cosmic horror stories where everyone in the town just starts going crazy and there's no explanation, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, it's literally just some guy just doesn't want to be friends with you anymore. And I was like, that's kind of a funny premise to start with. And that's my new phrase I came up with for it.
But yeah, so let's get into the plot now. So Colm Docherty begins ignoring his lifelong friend and drinking buddy, Padraig Sullivan. Again,
I'm not going to pronounce any of these names. I refuse.
I think I got it close to it. Yeah. Anyway, so, initially I liked the premise because, this is a fear that men, I guess, rarely have. Imagine if you just stopped being friends with someone. That feels more like a female thing,
No, yeah, I do agree. Like 100% with the sexism thing.
Thank you.
That you're 100% right. No, yeah, but I also think male friendships. This is why men have to start podcasts, because otherwise they would just go insane based on how stupid and pointless their conversations would otherwise be.
Yeah. Because I saw an ad today for a company. Again, I'm not going to name them. I don't want to give out any free adverts or whatever. But anyway, they have to pay us for that. And in this advert, basically two friends have an argument, and after the argument finishes, one of them's like, well, shall I get a pint in? And the other one goes, yeah, okay, yeah, get a pint in, yeah. And it's just like, they had an argument, they insulted each other, and then let's just get a pint. And that's not the actual joke. Oh, let's just get a pint. That's not the joke, but it's just something that happens after the initial argument. And yeah, I was like, yeah, that sums up male friendships a lot. You don't really, ever see something like this happen. So I do think it's a great concept. And Peter Bradshaw said, it's a study of male loneliness and swallowed anger. It's weirdly compelling and often very funny. And I think that's a good summation of the movie. Apart from very funny, I will say, yeah, it's just funny, not very funny.
Well, the one thing that I found really interesting about this is it is very much like Father Ted, just in that, basically in that it's like about a lot of Irish, but also specifically Irish people on an island off the coast of Ireland, and because I don't know how familiar you are with Father Ted, but
just the location then.
Yeah, but also like the kind of building off that location of it being just like in the middle of nowhere, which I do enjoy that. It very much kind of reminds me of Fargo with the whole kind of, it's just rural area. Everyone's a bit weird, which is just fun. Everyone likes that. Yeah, I also thought the priest character was quite funny.
Yeah, true. But the plot of Fargo is better than this.
Yeah. So yeah, this definitely, the plot is funny because it doesn't have, certainly I think, a traditional plot by any sense. Anyway, speaking of plot, I might have interrupted you in the middle of you elaborating on the plot some more.
No, I'm just saying, we're just talking about the initial conflict, of course. So Padraig presses Colm for an explanation, and he says Padraig is too dull, and he has got a point. I think Colin Farrell gives a good performance here. I think he's very good, but the thing is, like, I thought this about Kerry Condon as well. They're just too good looking for it, like a rural Irish island.
That's a good point. Well, didn't you think that about Barry Keoghan? Didn't you think he was too good looking?
I thought you were going to say Brendan Gleeson then.
Oh, I don't know. I felt like Brendan Gleeson has the excuse of being old.
Okay. Yeah. So Colm gives Padraig an ultimatum. Every time Padraig talks to him, Colm will cut off one of his fingers. And again, this is, I guess similar to the Irish Civil War. But the thing is, I was hoping it was specifically similar to stuff that was happening during the Irish Civil War.
You mean like you used to hope there were specifically Irish people cutting off their fingers?
Well, not cutting off their fingers, going on like hunger strikes, for instance.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I know that's what the Irish like to do, back in the 70s, during the Troubles.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
I just wondered if that's what was happening during the Irish Civil War. But I don't know. I don't think there was like a specific comparison there between him cutting off his fingers and the Civil War.
Yeah, I'm not sure, kind of damaging yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So we have this back and forth with Colm eventually, cutting off all his fingers, and Padraig, after Padraig admits to sending Declan, one of, his violin players, home. And yeah, Padraig, of course, comes home to find his pet donkey Jenny has choked to death on one of Colm's fingers. And yeah, the saddest death of the year, Michael.
No, yeah, I felt so sorry for that little donkey.
Yeah, and apparently, so they have this old banshee, is that what she's called?
Yes.
Yeah, and Mrs. McCormack, I think, she actually says some people are going to die, and one of them is Jenny, of course. So Padraig burns down Colm's house. He looks in the window and sees Colm calmly sitting inside. And yeah, it was kind of this moment kind of reminded me of it's just kind of quirky with some violence thrown in,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it got me thinking of oh yeah, that's kind of like what Tarantino does, almost. And I feel like that's a good formula for movies. If you have some quirky characters just with some violence thrown in. But
it is a pretty good formula.
The problem is it's just the plot isn't there. It's not as interesting. It's not that deep what's going on either. So that's where I'm struggling to fully get on board and say it's great. But yeah, again, at the end of the movie, of course, Colm survives and wonders whether the Civil War is coming to an end. Padraig says he's sure the fighting will begin again because some things there's no moving on from, adding that is a good thing before leaving. And
yes, so that's obviously where definitely you can't really say the Civil War connections are subtle.
Yes,
because that's pretty obvious.
Do you like when what's she called? Siobhan? What is the sister called?
Oh, Siobhan.
That's it, Siobhan, but it's but it's spelled really weirdly. Sorry.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
I know in Russian B's are pronounced V's.
All right.
So
Siobhan rejects Dominic, which is of course Barry Keoghan's romantic advances. And I like this scene because it's a meme. Because he goes, "Well, there goes that dream," and that has become a meme that I've seen countless times on football Twitter.
I see.
Yeah.
And then they go and throw themselves in a river.
Yeah. Did he do that or did he slip?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it was probably just unfortunate.
Yeah.
I just imagine that he got rejected and immediately threw himself in a river.
Yeah. He wasn't quite full regarded, was he?
No. He wasn't quite full regarded.
And that's the thing. What did Robert Downey Jr. say? Never.
You never go full regard.
Yeah, and he did not.
So he managed to avoid it.
He's on the boundaries. Yeah. So fed up, Siobhan moves to the mainland. Then of course Dominic drowns, like you said. And again, I would think that's some comparison to the Civil War, maybe, in terms of innocent lives lost, and then some people who just moved to like America, for instance, or maybe the UK.
Yeah, I think it can. Yeah, basically, yeah, like you say, there's two options: you either die or you leave. The story of Ireland. That's it. Those are the only two options. But no, yeah, I do think obviously, yeah, like as the allegory for Irish history works, and I guess this guy Martin McDonagh, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say he probably is Irish.
He's actually born in London.
Oh, good. Okay, that means he's got an even better perspective for it.
Yeah.
Because we've always known what's best about what's going on in Ireland.
The thing is, this movie, I saw this in Slate, by the way. This article which basically criticised Martin McDonagh. Basically, it said like McDonagh's version of Irishness, shown in Banshees, has always had an uneasy relationship with the actual country and the people who live in it. And of course, the Civil War is a metaphor for Colm and Padraig fighting. The person says it's both vague and clumsy. For it to work, you'd have to think the Civil War was just some squabble between best friends, as opposed to a conflict over a treaty with the British that granted only partial independence and divided Ireland into two political entities.
Yeah, well, dividing Ireland into two political entities, I'm sure that's not going to be a real issue going forward.
Well, exactly. Like this guy, he claims to be Irish, Martin McDonagh. But it was just a little squabble here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too, because I recently saw a video about the song "Zombies" by the Cranberries, and basically how the song "The Zombies" basically frames the whole Ireland conflict as being, kind of just a pointless. Like, that's what the Zombies does too. It's like, hey, stop fighting, you stupid brain dead zombies.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is a sense in which an anti-war message of war being pointless can rub people the wrong way if they perceive themselves to have had a legitimate grievance.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So Mark O'Connell is his name. He wrote this article on Slate. Basically says, it's worth noting, though not surprising, international critics have failed to take issue with its deployment of the hoariest Irish stereotypes.
Hoariest?
Yeah. H-O-R-I...
I have heard of that phrase, like whore without the W.
Yeah, H-O-A-R, sorry, of course. So yeah, basically, typical Irish stereotypes. Oh,
they also do come across as yokels.
Yeah, exactly. You're just basically, like sorry, what's that word?
Infantilizing?
Yeah, that's it. Infantilizing. I thought that didn't sound right, but it is right. Yeah, infantilizing the Irish, and that's what Martin McDonagh has kind of done with this movie. They're just squabbling, just like they did in the Irish Civil War. I want, a lot of them quite stupid and, and like, well-meaning, charming, but ultimately not that smart.
Yeah, they're a bit dim.
Yeah, they're a bit dim, and isn't that funny? Yeah, exactly. And you that got a laugh out of you, but like, I can imagine, Irish people.
For the Irish, they would be upset about it.
Mark O'Connell, like, oh yeah, this isn't really accurate, and it's maybe a bit insulting almost. And yeah, I won't.
Yeah, but sometimes I do just think, what's the point in Ireland? And I'll just say that there because obviously we don't have enough time to discuss that or unpack that in more detail. But sometimes, just in this incredibly short review, I'll just throw out the broad geopolitical question. What is the point in Ireland?
Well, the point in Ireland is that London-born Martin McDonagh can make plays and movies about Ireland. And,
yeah, exactly.
And he can get Oscar nominations because of that.
I feel like Ireland is just kind of it's just England. It's just England with a bit of just a bit of something.
Yeah, that's great. So anyway, what's your rating out of 10?
Yeah, okay. So like I guess I should explain why I like the movie, because actually one thing I want to say just right at the end is that like I was thinking to myself when it first got introduced and I was like, oh, it's just going to be about these people who decide not to be friends. I was like, man, I hope I have confidence in Martin McDonagh. I really hope it's just going to be the entire movie he's just not doesn't want to be friends with him, and it's never really going to be properly established why, and it's going to be this completely ambiguous thing that's never really addressed in the film. And
That's not
you know
the
what, he
case.
did it. Yeah, I get you, but it's kind of like, so he gives a reason, but like the reason why it's suddenly out of nowhere he doesn't want to be friends with him. My assessment is that, you know, obviously his previous film, Three Billboards, was all about kind of justice. I feel like this film was basically about conflict, and I did enjoy the arbitrariness of it. Now, Three Billboards, I gave a 10. This is not as good. I think the main thing that counts against it is the fact I don't think thematically it's got as much going on. But I do think that the plot was interesting, and I do think it worked with the weird, quirky humor, which I know you don't like. I'm going to give it.
I'm fine with weird, quirky humor.
That you don't like as much as I do.
Yes.
I'm going to give
On its
it
own.
a mid-ling 9.
Yeah, of course you are. Of course
Because
you are.
because it's right up my alley.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it examines conflict and how arbitrary it can be. But as Mark O'Connell pointed out, well, if it's a metaphor for the Irish Civil War, that conflict was not arbitrary. It wasn't just people fighting. It was, there was a treaty that people disagreed with, that the British, had with the Irish. And of course, we saw for decades after there was disastrous consequences.
Yeah, they just kept fighting for no reason.
Yeah. So Mark O'Connell says, and this is why I'm only going to give it an 8 out of 10. As a political allegory, it seems obviously retrofitted, tacked onto the narrative to add unearned resonance. And I would say, yeah, that's pretty fair. And again, I don't hate the movie. I give it an 8 out of 10. That's a good rating because, again, It is enjoyable somewhat. It's just not that deep, and I just don't think the plot's that interesting either. Of course, it's like there is barely a plot, to be honest. It's just them, the two friends, arguing again and again, and things escalate. So yeah, I mean, it's good, but it's not great. And I'm glad this didn't win. This didn't win last year, because that would have been disappointing. Because there's a lot of good movies this year, including the next one. Michael, what is the next one?
Well, Luke, the next movie is The Fabelmans, or as I think there was a really insightful moment in the film. I thought this had a lot of thematic depth to it, where someone says, I think, The Bagelmans, but Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about the Fabelmans?
Yeah, sure. So it's a 2022 coming-of-age drama film directed by Steven Spielberg, who co-wrote and produced it with Tony Kushner.
Did you just say Jared Kushner?
No, Tony. It stars Michelle Williams, Paul Dano, Seth Rogen, Gabrielle LaBelle, and Judd Hirsch. It was released on November the 11th, 2022 in the US. And what is the budget, Michael?
The budget was, this will be more than the other ones, so I'm going to go for 50 million.
Oh, well, you really went higher, didn't you? Like, I thought you were going to go like 30 or 35. But no, you went a lot higher. It's only 40.
Okay.
But yeah, what about the box office?
I actually don't know, because it's a Spielberg one, and usually his movies do kind of well, but at the same time, I also feel like, this movie, it's not like it doesn't scream box office, but I'm going to go for I think it got higher than the other ones. Ooh. I'm going to go for 60 million, 55 million.
Okay, 45.
Okay,
again,
so
all of these are
only 10 million off.
Yeah, all of these are around the same. Aren't they? Yeah. Which makes sense, of course. Prestigious Oscar movies, which I think got decent budgets, not massive budgets, and just made their money back because they were nominated for Best Picture. I think that is that is the case. So anyway, let's talk about The Fabelmans. Michael, did you like it?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you said you really liked it. I did like this film. I feel like I'm kind of surprised you liked it, because I was thinking like, I like this film in the way that I kind of like a lot of films, which is it's just a pretty feel-good film with quite well-defined characters. And like a lot of the interpersonal conflict is pretty well established, and you kind of know where everyone stands, and it is entertaining to just watch it play out. I will say, like, there's one thematic thing that I wanted to get into, but apart from that, I don't know if I would really say the film had super deep themes, but I did like the plot and the characterization and kind of emotional resonance.
Yeah, I think it did have basically a deep theme, which, well, maybe not deep. I don't know. The central theme, of course, was the conflict between Sammy as a filmmaker, and then, of course, wanting to, make movies, that's his dream, and then, of course, his family, which, Judd Hirsch kind of spells out, to be honest. But he gave a great performance, so I'm kind of fine with that scene. But yeah, obviously, I think overall, it was interesting, and the conflict, and because, of course, it's not just any family. There's a bit of a secret here, which is that Seth Rogen, is having an affair, perhaps, with
Steven. I guess it's kind of implied to be an emotional affair.
Yeah. Spielberg's mother. And of course, that has to parallel what happened in real life, I imagine.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Okay, I want to say this right out the gate. Like, what do you make of the fact that this is like autobiographic, but it doesn't have like the cojones to be a full-on autobiography? Because one of the things that kind of annoyed me about that. Well, see, I wasn't sure. The only thing that bothered me about it is like, you know, I'm interested in the story of Steven Spielberg's life, and I know that this does parallel his life in a lot of ways. But it bothered me that we weren't technically watching a movie about Steven Spielberg's life. I was like, I want to watch a movie about Steven Spielberg's life.
I imagine he lied. Well, the thing is, if it was about his life, it wouldn't be as narratively satisfying, I don't think.
Yeah, so yeah. Because it's possible. It's interesting. Like, I guess what I wonder is, did it pretty much just deviate in the way that any biopic would deviate?
It deviates in the fact he never had a girlfriend in high school.
Cringe.
I know people said that. So that's the thing. He's like, oh, I don't want it to be my life exactly. You know, I just want it to be kind of similar, so people know kind of what I went through as a kid, basically. So let's get into the plot here. So it's told through an original story, of course, the fictional Sammy Fabelman, a young filmmaker who explores how the power of films can help him see the truth about his family and those around him. Well, that's the thing. That's what it says on Wikipedia, perhaps. I would say the power of film can help him see the truth about his family, but that can cause his family a lot of pain. And also the fact that he has used that pain to produce many great movies. And of course, I think E.T. is a famous example. Of course, there is a divorce in E.T., and that, of course, is one of the best movies of all time in terms of being beloved. Was the highest grossing movie of all time at one point, E.T. So yeah, Spielberg has basically used his family and the conflict to, and also the filmmaking has hurt his family, which is what we'll get into. So yeah, basically, you can see right from the first time that Sammy Fabelman sees his first film, he's dazzled by this train scene. He asks, for a model set for Hanukkah, and yeah, it's just it did feel like a Spielberg origin story, didn't it? Like,
yeah. There's kind of that like idea of being a love letter to the classic cinema, because that's the thing. Like we all know about what's it called, Indiana Jones, and how George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, they saw these old adventure movies and they were like, wow, we've got to make movies like that, which is it's a very cute reason to want to make a movie. So I guess it makes sense that they decided to include that as
And how his mum says, oh yeah, we'll watch these films together, and don't tell your dad. And again, it's a case of, his mother supporting him right from the word go, and his dad, being too, his dad basically not supporting him at all.
Yeah, see, obviously I mentioned the idea of like, the thematic element. The one thing that like I was like, okay, yeah, this seems pretty distinctly thematic, is when his dad is comparing, because his dad's like I guess a computer engineer, computer scientist, something like that, and he says, that's reality, whereas filmmaking is imaginary, and he kind of says that to diminish filmmaking. And I thought like that was a good moment in that I feel like, there is, a decent amount of kind of thematic weight to that contrast between filmmaking, but that's just imaginary. It doesn't actually do anything. And obviously I imagine that's something that Steven Spielberg would very much disagree with.
Well, in this movie, literally his filmmaking does impact reality.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, like that's the thing. I kind of like how they introduce that idea of like, what does filmmaking actually achieve, and then like you said, they kind of answer that question.
Yeah, it's the message of this movie is no, filmmaking actually does have power. And that is, again, he disagrees with Paul Dano, his dad, in that scene.
I like the bit where Tom Cruise shows up to show Paul Dano the error of his ways.
Okay, so Burt is offered, that's his dad, a new job in Phoenix, where he and his family move in 1957 at his mother's insistence. Burt's best friend and business partner, Benny, goes too.
Oh, sounds pretty sussy.
What's going on here? Is that some cooking I spy?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, I was that was interesting. And then of course, when the Fabelmans and Benny take a camping trip, with Sammy capturing footage of their vacation, of course, all of them can see through his mother's dress, and it's specifically pointed out by his sister, who makes a big deal of it. And Spielberg Sammy Fabelman just keeps filming. Does Sammy want what Benny has with his mother?
This seems like his mother's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
What else were they getting up to in that closet?
Yeah, and exactly. I'm just like, it's just a very weird scene in general, because like it's pointed out, we can see through her dress, and he just keeps on filming. I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, I guess it's just a case of, I don't think Spielberg wants to make the point. Oh yeah, I wanted to have sex with my mother.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be about like he just wanted to capture reality as it is.
Yeah,
but sometimes you don't want to capture reality as it is.
Yeah, he doesn't care about these, the implications of what he's doing. It's just like, oh, this is a cool shot, so I'll make I'll take the shot. So that's what I'm doing. I don't really care about anything else. So years later, Sammy makes films with his friends in the Boy Scouts. And utilizes post-production effects and earns a badge in photography. So yeah, again, it's his origin story. And yeah, then of course his grandma dies, and the Fablemans are visited by Mitzi's uncle Boris, a film worker. He speaks with Sammy about compromising his family with art, telling him that they will continue to be at odds with one another. Yeah, and I guess this is how you get to be the greatest director ever.
Yeah,
like
you got to give everything up.
Yeah, it is the same with athletes. They have just like other top athletes, the best. They're obsessed with winning. They're so competitive, and it's the same, I guess, with Spielberg.
Yeah, apparently Mr. Beast used to work on Christmas Day. As I saw a short, and it was like Mr. Beast talking about his Sigma male grind set, and he was saying like when he was making YouTube videos and he was obsessed with it, he'd be like, yeah, even on Christmas Day I was there, brainstorming video ideas, coming up with or editing or whatever else. So yeah, that's what you got to do if you want to be one of the best, like Mr. Beast is. That's what you got to.
Mr. Beast and Spielberg, two peas in a pod.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But just think, we will actually see at some point there will be a Mr. Beast biopic, guaranteed.
Yes, no, there will be, but I don't know how that'd be interesting. Like, yeah, I guess
just I hope they have the moment where he just counted to 100 in his bedroom. Sorry, I counted to 100,000. I hope they just have that completely unedited.
The thing is, I think that a profile of him was done recently, and I saw that he was just very depressed and just didn't have a personality. Basically, that was who he was.
Yeah,
and that's interesting how he's given up everything for the success. So you could do something with that, I guess. But just like showing what he does isn't that interesting? But whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, Judge Hurst, by the way, did a great job. That was his Sammy's uncle. I really liked his performance. And yeah, then of course Sammy begins editing the vacation footage, to cheer up his mum. But then
discovers the evidence.
Yeah, she and Benny are having an affair. Of course, he could only see it via movies and film. He couldn't see what was right in front of him. But also that's the power of movies as well.
Movies will make you realize affairs are happening.
Yeah, and of course Sammy shows her footage of the affair, and then she of course is very upset, and as is he, and of course it eventually leads to a divorce. And filmmaking is a curse essentially. That brought happiness, of course, for Sammy, but then pain. That's why he stops using his camera. I think in the second half of the movie, because it's like, no, this will only bring me pain, and that's Spielberg, I guess, saying, yeah, like this whole job, it hasn't been easy. It's it's difficult being a director, and I'm sure it's difficult being basically any artist at the top of your game, where you have to work long hours and stress over everything. So yeah, and of course when they get divorced, what happens when Paul Dano and Michelle Williams are explaining to the kids that they're getting a divorce?
Oh well, everyone gets really upset about it.
Yeah. But what does Sammy see himself doing?
Oh crap! This was okay. Just for the record, this was actually the first movie I watched. So I'm just trying to what does he see himself doing? Does he see himself filming it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. He's imagining himself filming it. So why is he doing that?
Because he's going crazy. No, I guess just because like he's thinking about like that. That's the only moment where he feels kind of secure and happy and in control of things. So he's jumping to it as like it's his safe space. Yeah,
well, I that may be the case. That's a good interpretation. Another interpretation is he is transfixed as he is horrified by the notion and perhaps the knowledge that he will one day make this film, relating it to how the divorce of Spielberg's parents in real life had a large impact on his work. So that was David Sims in The Atlantic. Yeah, basically this film connects personally to his past, specifically his divorce. And she brought up the example of E.T. And obviously there's another Spielberg movie that centers around divorce, Catch Me If You Can.
Yes.
If you remember that.
I do remember that, yeah, that mouse in the cream.
Yeah, and of course Sammy, his use of filmmaking to escape the problems in his family is similar to Frank Abagnale's use of his actions to escape his own reality as a result of his own parents' breakup. I think that is also a good interpretation, Michael. So yeah, you can look at it in various ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and I think it's a really good scene. Again, so this is more than just like, it's a love letter to filmmaking. It's his origin story. No, it actually examines
his
how
relationship
filmmaking-
to it and how that interfaces with like things, the emotional things he experiences in his life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's why I did think it was a very good movie. So in California, Sammy becomes targeted with anti-Semitic abuse.
Yeah, this kind of happens out of nowhere. I mean, like, obviously, like, I get it, but it's like, it's one of those things where, like, I guess it's fine. There's not really a problem with it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, there's not really a problem with it. No. There's you can just have the character be randomly bullied. But I was thinking to myself, like, when it happened, I was like, oh yeah, he's Jewish. I mean, I knew that already because they have all the Jewish stuff of like the menorah and things, but
Yeah. He also begins dating the devoutly Christian Monica.
yeah, I can't believe this was
and
fake.
I only believe one of those things happened: the anti-Semitic abuse, dating this girlfriend. Yeah, that didn't happen. I think maybe he just put that in the movie because it enhanced the story, the movie, the narrative. And honestly, the Christian scenes are quite funny.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, but like knowing that it's not true, like it just means I was kind of thinking to myself, like, it's a bit weird that there's like this kind of Christian element in there when it's like Steven Spielberg. Obviously, like if it was Martin Scorsese, I'd be like, yeah, of course he's going to throw some Christian stuff in there. But like Steven Spielberg, he doesn't really deal with that. And I was like, oh, I wonder. But yeah, like the idea that it's just like just a random thing that happens that's kind of funny because she's a bit weird. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So this Ditch Day film, of course, is played that Sammy films in front of Sammy's peers to a rapturous response. It glorifies his bully Logan. When Logan confronts Sammy, confused over his positive portrayal, they reach an understanding. And the thing is, do you think this happened in real life?
I suspect that there was no equivalent to this. But I don't know. I mean, maybe one way or the other. In which case, you're going to make me look like a fool. But my instinct is to say that it seemed like a very, like movie moment, and it didn't happen in real life.
Well, I'm not going to make you look like a fool. But I will say there is this line where he says, "Oh, I won't tell anybody about it unless I make a movie about it."
That is true. That is the line they say. Yes.
So that could be a message of it's like, oh, this really happened, and this is me making a movie about it.
Yeah, I mean that was like a fun. It was kind of a fun moment, but again, like it is also one of those moments where you think about it a bit, and then you're like, well, it was fun, but what exactly was the point in it?
Well, I'll fucking tell you, you Philistine.
Good.
What do you mean? What was the point? It shows the power of filmmaking.
Yeah, I do get that. Like that, I do understand that. But
how he got his girlfriend back because of this film. He managed to do that.
Yeah.
And that I think that Spielberg, or Sammy in this movie, thinking, oh, what can I do with this camera? What can I do with filmmaking? He was like testing himself.
Yeah, to make showing how he can even make a bad guy look good.
Yeah, how make a bad guy look good. Maybe even change his own perception of this guy, but I doubt it was going that far. But yeah, basically, get this relationship is now, they're back together. The relationship is fixed, and that is again shows that the power that filmmaking can have. And yeah, of course, it caused his other bully, the really anti-Semitic one, to hate him.
Yes.
To want to kick him, and yeah, of course, what in fact happens is his bully Logan then fights off the overtly anti-Semitic bully, and yeah, that's the power of filmmaking. You can get big Aryan people to protect you.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're little and
Jewish.
Jewish.
You can just get the goys to have your back. I like the moment. I like the moment where afterwards he says, I'm gonna now go let you move into the Muslim family's house, the Palestinian family's house down the road.
I think that's great. Wonderful stuff. So Sammy wants to drop out of college, and so his dad accepts his son's passion and tells Sammy to keep on his path. Obviously, he sees how happy his ex-wife is, and then he's like, hey, I want, I see that I can't keep Sammy in a bad situation. Happiness is the most important thing. So then he lets Sammy go as well and do his thing. And then, of course, at the end, he meets John Ford. Ford offers Sammy pointers such as never framing the horizon in the center.
Yes.
And at the end, Spielberg moves the camera, doesn't he? So the horizon isn't in the center, showing
it's a meta joke.
It is, and it's also showing perhaps he is still a student. He is perhaps the greatest director of all time, but he's still learned from people of the past, and those people are still legends to him. And also, of course, John Ford is played by David Lynch.
Yes,
which is a great choice.
Especially seeing as so many of Steven Spielberg's movies are just the same as David Lynch's movies.
Oh wow, no,
they're just there like two peas in a pod.
Okay, so conclude on this movie.
Yeah, so this movie, pretty much what I said at the beginning, really. Like, I think the emotions are really good. The, character relationships are really good. The plot is a bit meandering, but that kind of is okay because it's a coming-of-age movie. I don't think like in terms of like the broader artistic stuff, I actually don't think this movie's like fantastic. I don't think Steven Spielberg's ever been like a super artistic director, and that counts against it. But I'm going to
this is quite artistic though.
It's probably one of his more artistic ones, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
I was only going to give it a low 7, which is usually what I give movies where I'm like, you know.
Do you just not like movies?
I hate movies. No, I like you know, I see for me, I mean, you know, I didn't love it, but I, you know, like the emotional stuff was the big positive for me. So yeah, low 7.
It's also visceral with you, you know. It's like I love how this movie examines, you know, filmmaking as from the perspective of the greatest director ever, perhaps again, and he's like kind of critiquing it, but also, you know, showing how much power it has, you know, and that's really interesting. So yeah, I do think that. Yeah, well, what Spielberg does in this movie is really good, and I think it's an 8.5 out of 10.
Oh, saucy.
So yeah, no, I really think this is a great movie. So yeah, better than Banshees of Inisherin, that's for
Banshees
sure.
of Ed Sheeran. You know what was actually shocking, by the way? I spelt Banshees of Inisherin right on my first try. I was like, because the whole time I've just been saying like, Banshees of Inisherin, like I've barely even been pronouncing it correctly, and I was like, okay, let me actually try to type it properly when I write out my notes, and I checked, and it was correct. Anyway.
Okay, so let's move on to Triangle of Sadness.
Triangle of Sadness.
So Triangle of Sadness is a 2022 satirical black comedy film written and directed by Ruben Östlund. Which country is he from?
Germany.
Sweden.
Ah.
It stars a lot of people. I'm not going to read it out.
Too many.
Yes. And check out, if you want, Michael, the list of production companies for this movie.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like because this is one of those movies where they have the credits at the beginning, if I'm not mistaken.
It's crazy. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes, by the way.
Ooh.
Just like Anatomy of a Fall did.
Ooh.
Is this movie as good as Anatomy of a Fall? Well, actually, first, it was released on the 28th of October in the UK. I don't know when it was released in the US, doesn't say. But anyway, Michael, what was the budget for Triangle of Sadness?
Well, they did have to have a few more interesting locations than some of the other films we've discussed. Having said that, I also feel like the actors weren't that expensive. So I'm going to go for, you know, I've already said it's all been around the same. I'm going to go for 25 million.
15.6. Again, this isn't a Hollywood movie.
Yes.
What about the box office?
Well, I don't know how this movie could have made that much money, but I'm just going to repeat what I said last time and say this movie made 25 million.
32.
Okay.
0.8, yeah. So yeah, a decent return on that. So, Michael, did you like Triangle of Sadness?
I did. Yes, I liked this movie. There's one thing I do want to mention right out the gate, which is, and like we have to talk about this like later on, but I mentioned it right now because the beginning being so disjointed from the rest is a very strange thing, and I want to talk about that. But essentially, the second or the final 2 parts are a much more concise story about kind of class relations and things like that. It felt very reminiscent of Parasite. I don't think it was as good as...
How fucking dare you?
I don't think it was quite as good, but I think it was very reminiscent in terms of the themes. You know, artistic direction was good. It was pretty funny. Was it? No, I don't know. I know someone said like, I remember seeing something about it where someone's like, oh, this is a comedy, which, I mean, it said a black comedy then, didn't it? Which is funny because, like, I don't think I would have laughed at any point. I think maybe there was one scene where I was like, oh, that's funny. But I don't think it was that funny.
When they all throw up, it's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah, I found that gross. I'm one of those I'm one of those people who, like, even when I think about throwing up, I kind of gag a bit anyway. But yeah, so I would say the theme is pretty obvious. Which I guess we'll get into. But I did like the movie because I did think that theme was solidly executed.
Well, look, I got it because this is like the most heavy-handed film I've ever seen.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there.
This is so unsubtle and just beats you over the fucking head with it in just the most horribly, like, you know, oafish way it can. You know, this movie, along with The Menu, I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I haven't. Is that the or whatever? I think I know what it is, but I can't be bothered to explain. But yeah, what about this movie along with The Menu?
Well, it kind of mocks, you know, incredibly wealthy people, and yeah, the Menu does different things to this movie. Of course, The Menu is specifically about restaurant, high-end restaurant culture, I guess. But yeah, this like is so fucking heavy-handed, and it's not the plot is not interesting at all. It's they go on a cruise. You know, some shit happens, you know, and then they get shipwrecked, and like the story, there's no story here. Again, like you compared it to Parasite, but Parasite has such an interesting story, and examines, class relations in a fun way. And this just does not do that at all. And it's the same with The Menu. Like, I watched The Menu, and people kind of like it, I think, but it's the same there. It's just so heavy-handed and just. I remember watching The Menu thinking, yeah, I agree with the politics of what it's saying, but this is not good. And it's kind of the same with Triangle of Sadness. It's like, yeah, this is just not good. This is not a good movie. The same, I guess, with Knives Out, Glass Onion, whatever that's called.
It's I believe it's Glass Onion, a Knives Out story.
There we fucking go. Yeah, it's just like, you have to execute these movies well. You can't just make a film about how rich people are stupid, and how, I guess, to be fair to this movie, Triangle of Sadness, it is more about how power in general, again, shouldn't be concentrated with just one person, because they will abuse it. There should not be this hierarchy in society in general. So there you go. There's my take on it. But we'll get into it, I guess. You can explain to me why I'm wrong, right?
Yeah, easy peasy. First of all, can we, the first thing I want to do is get the beginning bit out of the way, because it's weird, right? It's weird that the opening is, well, first of all, you have him just the random male model scene, and of course they even introduce the phrase Triangle of Sadness, and it's to do with it's a modeling term for your face and making yourself look sad. Yes. And then there's a scene about men and women paying, which maybe gets reincorporated later, because there's kind of some gender stuff going on the island.
It does get reincorporated later, but again, it's just very heavy-handed. It's just the guy even brings up specifically gender roles in society. He says that. Yeah, okay, now you got us thinking about that instead of just allowing us to think that for ourselves. So yeah, I mean, I think the start was okay. How uncomfortable the casting call was with other males. I think that was good because of how weird it was. I like that. But again, I think this is just Ruben Östlund taking aim at, I guess he's taking aim at the modeling industry in this scene, and how pathetic it is, I guess. One of his points in this movie is, everything is arbitrary in terms of what society values. And of course, modeling is people are paid well, but women are paid a lot more than men, even though they're not doing anything more, and male models just have to, you see what he's being asked to do. It's just walk up and down, and then he tries to walk with a beat in his head, apparently, and it just looks exactly the same. And yeah, again, it's just, again, I agree with it, and I kind of like how uncomfortable it was at the start. But yeah, again, the phrase heavy-handed comes to mind. But yeah, shall we get onto the yacht now?
Yeah, so the yacht, the yacht is to me it was so surprising when I was just okay, wait, so now this is suddenly going to be, because it's weird, because part 1 lasts 10 minutes, and then suddenly you're on to part 2 and it lasts ages. Do you have any broad thoughts on the whole boat situation?
Well, yeah, I thought you were going to say something on the boat situation.
Well, the thing is, for me, again, because I've obviously tried not to write too much in the interest of spending time, I didn't really have much to say about the boat situation until everyone starts throwing up.
Okay, well, but before that, we'll just talk about the fact that, the crew works to meet, the guests. Every need and whim, the head of staff demands they obey these requests, including, having the crew swim in the sea, which again is, oh, look how stupid, the wealthy are, or how obnoxious they are, or how out of touch they are. It's, again, just Parasite, but just worse, in my opinion, because it's just so much more obvious. One crew member, of course, gets fired. If you remember that.
Yes, that's the one who takes his top off.
Yeah, and let's talk about Woody Allen and the Russian capitalist exchanging baths, and this happens kind of after everybody's been sick. But it's we'll talk about what happens with that in a sec. But yeah, of course, I think I kind of like this when they're going back and forth, Woody Allen and this capitalist guy, because he's a Marxist apparently, which is very convenient for the plot, but whatever.
I will say, I wasn't to me, I was kind of wondering whether or not Woody Harrelson was kind of saying he was Marxist, kind of in a trolley way, where I don't necessarily, my interpretation was he wasn't necessarily a committed, card-carrying Marxist. It was just he was aware he was talking to, this kind of cringe Eastern European, neoliberal type.
I think he was, because you can tell later on when he has books that he's reading out to the crew.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, what this is doing is it's mocking the kind of people who do this in real life. Looking up quotes from from, oh, this is what this famous
Yeah,
Marxist
I like
said,
the way
or-
like the Russian guy like said it, as if like it was like an original thought or something, but like, or like he said like,
Yeah.
I think what happened is the first time he said the quote, or the first quote he said, it was like as if he was just saying it off the top of his head, but then like he was looking it up later.
Yeah, because again, it means nothing. All of this, you're just owning each other, and even they themselves are like laughing to themselves, and they're having a good time, and it's like, haha. Like again, there's just no point in this arguing, which you see perhaps all the time on the internet, for instance. It's just on Twitter or whatever. It's just kind of futile. And in the end, these two are doing it, and they're even like enjoying each other's like barbs.
Yeah.
There's not really any animosity. It's all just for show. Essentially, and they're all just saying these arguments so they can feel good, so they feel like they won the argument. There's nothing of substance there, which I like. And again, that's social commentary, which is a bit further than, oh, aren't the rich so out of touch, So I like that bit, I have to say. As one of the positive bits in the movie. But of course, several guests then become seasick, possibly due to the food. And why would the food be undercooked, Michael?
Because of the fact that they are posh, so they like food to not be cooked.
You really don't watch these movies, do you?
No. What happened? Why was the food undercooked?
Well,
No. I know why. Because the chefs or the food cook people were told to go outside and go play in the pool or on the water slide. Okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah, you see, and again, so all the rich people
they self-sabotaged.
Yeah, fucking stuff up, and it's their fault because they demanded something that happened, and okay, so the poorer people went along with it, and the rich fucked themselves over. But yeah, again, it's kind of heavy. I'm surprised you didn't get it, but there is just a line. Oh, the food won't be cooked properly.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember that line. Now you mention it. Now you put two and two together. I was busy being distracted by everyone throwing up.
Yeah, there's this weird scene where, of course, there's a lot of sewage that is
coming out of the toilet. Yeah, which seems like it seems kind of funny to imagine that would have happened, I guess, anyway, based on the fact that like it seems kind of like it just happens randomly.
And then the captain is obviously saying, "Oh, you are so lucky," while everyone is like, vomiting and there's sewage everywhere.
I thought there was like a really kind of bizarre, obviously intentional kind of tonal dissonance there.
Yeah, I didn't really get the point of that. Honestly, I was trying to think, and maybe I'm just not smart enough, but it's like, so what's the director saying there? Like, oh, you're so lucky, but look at them, they're vomiting, so they're not so lucky. So it's ridiculous what Woody Harrelson is saying. I
don't know. I suppose my confession, I should say now, because especially when in terms of me actually enjoying the movie, is that I wasn't taking the movie overly seriously as a thematic work. Which isn't to say it doesn't have themes.
You have to do that because the themes are just that. That's the point of this movie, just themes.
Well, from my perspective, I was kind of leaning into the craziness of it, and like so in terms of like the idea of like that scene.
Yeah, but it's a directorial choice for him to say that while we see all this. It's an unmistakable choice that the director has made, and we have to interpret why he made that choice.
Well, I just think he just chose to have some random nonsense be said while everyone was throwing up. I don't know. Yeah, I suppose I see what you're saying about how like because they like this thing's happening, he's saying like, oh, you're really lucky. I mean, the way I kind of looked at it is just like in general he's saying negative things about them while at the same time they're experiencing this unpleasant physical sensation. I don't know if there's like a direct one-to-one correlation between exactly what's being said and the physical correlation. I think it's just a sense of you are the people who are bad because you have all this money and wealth and excess.
So isn't there a larger point being made there? Surely.
I mean, I would just say the point is just that like it's introducing the misery the characters are going to experience. But I don't think there's like an intellectual point about.
Well, there must be an intellectual point, otherwise he wouldn't have made it, because it's such a sharp contrast. It's such a fucking sharp contrast between what Woody Harrelson is saying and what these guests are experiencing. Like fucking sewage is running all over them.
I mean, but I don't know if it's, I don't know. Yeah, like you're saying it and I'm hearing you, but I'm thinking to myself, I don't know that there is supposed to be, I just don't think there's supposed to be like a one-to-one. I just think it's like, in general, the fact that Woody Harrelson is saying negative things is then reinforced with them experiencing negative physical experiences. it's just, I think, reinforcing like the emotion of misery for them. That's how I kind of understood it.
Okay, that's an interesting point. It's just making things worse for these people.
Yeah.
But again, I think I don't know what the point of that would be. I guess I maybe I'll look how much they fucked themselves over, perhaps, and also now they're being berated. But now, what is the larger point of that? Like rich people. That again, I just would love to know what he was doing with that, because I do think there is a larger point, because it's such a sharp contrast again between what Harrelson is saying and then what the guests are experiencing. There has to be
you should
something there.
ask him. Maybe he'll reveal.
I will ask him.
Find him
on
Twitter.
Next time I'm in Sweden, I'll ask him.
I don't know. My father-in-law was saying that apparently he messaged Val Kilmer on Facebook and Val Kilmer responded.
Oh, that's cool.
So
when morning arrives, obviously the pirates attack, sinking the yacht.
Like that comes out of like that was like really surprising in a way, because like they do have a scene of like some guy with a gun like hanging out on the so it's like they've got security and stuff, and I was like, oh wow. So I guess there's some risk of the boat being attacked, and then that happens.
Yeah, again, like that could have been a more interesting scene, but nope, boat's attacked, and of course the old couple. This is how good the satire is. The old couple
get blown up by a grenade.
Oh, what's this? Oh, it's a grenade. Oh, we've manufactured grenades, and they were killed by one. Oh, yeah, wow. Isn't that irony? Great.
Yeah, it was ironic. Great. You can't argue that it was ironic, Luke.
So, a small group of survivors managed to escape to an island. Paula continues to order Abigail to serve the cruise guests. She's the head person or whatever.
Yes.
But when it becomes clear Abigail is the only one with skills, she mutinies and usurps command. Again, it's kind of point of the movie. Like, there are so many people, like social media influencers or models or whoever, just who have pointless skills, who contribute nothing to society in general in terms of how it functions. And when the going gets tough, well, now the person with actual skills, like Abigail, then she now has power, and society just does not value things correctly, essentially, or society values skills arbitrarily, basically. Yes. So there you go. And she also gains her own private bed inside a lifeboat. Again, like, I agree with all the points that the movie's making. It just does it with so little subtlety, and then she coerces Carl into sex by giving him food.
Yeah,
again,
classic.
That's it. Yeah, there's a twist on the gender roles.
Yeah.
Like, of course, Yaya. I can only think of Yaya Torre, by the way. Her name's wrong. So she was talking at the beginning of the movie about maybe becoming a trophy wife at one point, and then this guy Carl, of course, becomes basically a trophy husband, if you will. Is he happy about that? Probably not, right?
No, he probably isn't. Yeah, I was gonna say I found it funny that the two men in their prime are the ones who get become depowered. Which I think is an example of I think the movie being unrealistic, which obviously the movie is unrealistic, because I think in reality, even though I am a bit confused. Okay, no, it's fine. But basically, you'd think that. So what I was about to say was irrelevant, but you'd think like the two guys, they'd be able to work this stuff out. Like, I like the fact that none of them were even able to just watch Abigail start a fire and be like, okay, we know how to start a fire now. So yeah, but obviously, again, I don't think it's supposed to be realistic, because there's lots of unrealistic stuff that happens.
Okay, fine. We'll get on to that. So Abigail and Yaya then, of course, discover this lift. And they've been stranded near a luxury resort. Yaya celebrates, but Abigail hesitates to enter, fearing she's losing power. She prepares to attack Yaya with a rock, but hesitates when Yaya offers to help Abigail get better work at her assistance. Again, this is, I guess, human nature in general. This is what Ruben Östlund is saying. Humans maybe create a stupid society. Based on the fact that there always has to be a hierarchy, and people could say, aren't servants just as crass as the rich, like what Abigail's doing, or means she deserves to be a servant, and the rich people don't have to worry about it, and it's all shit. But no, I think there's a deeper point, which is society is awful if it's built on the fact that there is this hierarchy where certain people have power because they're going to want to keep it and want to do horrible things in whatever situation. And therefore, it's not good to have someone who is just. It's not good to have somebody who is just at the top and everybody else is below them, because it will create just very unequal power dynamics and create a shit society. But anyway, what was
so basically, the first thing I was going to say is that the idea of them being by a resort the whole time, I did think it was quite funny. Not like laugh out loud funny, but obviously. But having said that, I actually predicted this like pretty early on. I was thinking, I bet they're literally going to be a stone's throw away from civilization, and they're just too stupid and incompetent to bother to actually look around, because it's pretty obvious.
No, I don't think it's down to stupidity and incompetence. I really disagree here. I don't think this was like, I think it's just because there needs to be this conflict at the end.
Oh, okay. See, no, okay, that's interesting that you think that, because yeah, for me, I was always thinking like that. I thought that the point was supposed to be that it's like an intentionally ridiculous joke, like it's a whole massive joke that they've basically returned back to primal monkey caveman society when they're right next to a resort.
It is kind of a joke, yeah. It's like, because it's a black comedy, so it is kind of a joke. But like overall, this is why I do kind of agree with it. But overall, yeah, this was added in at the end to create that final conflict of Abigail wondering whether she should kill Yahya, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, see, that's interesting because I think I was thinking as well, actually, predicting that there was going to be a thing with Abigail. So I guess I was kind of predicting two simultaneous things, because the other thing I was thinking is like, I bet there's going to be a point where like maybe a ship's coming past, or there's an opportunity for them to be rescued, and Abigail is going to not want them to be rescued because she's realized she has power in this society and she doesn't want to return back to the other society, civilization, wink wink, where she's actually treated like shit even though she's the only one with actual skills to survive, blah blah blah. So yeah, I kind of that does make sense, and that would be a thing they would introduce as a conflict or whatever. And we're all in agreement that she definitely does actually kill Yahya, 100%. No, everyone's like, I don't know. I remember, I wanted to find out, because this is really weird, the random bit of what's his face, the guy Brian, I don't know, running through the jungle. I can't remember his actual name.
Yeah.
Which I was like, wait, what the fuck is that? Why is he running through the jungle?
It's Carl, by the way.
Carl, that's it. So I looked up, like, you know, what's with the ending of, like, why is he running through the jungle? And I ended up finding people talking about the ending with Abigail and Yahya. And there were some people saying, like, oh, it's supposed to be ambiguous. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it is obviously ambiguous, but she definitely killed Yahya, no doubt.
No, I don't think it
Guaranteed
is.
She killed Yahya.
Well, it is definitely ambiguous, yeah. I mean, the ending is ambiguous.
No, because well, the thing, I would say, for me, it's one of those situations where you're not shown it, but I would, like, when I'm watching the movie, as far as I'm concerned, I'm taking it for granted that she did kill Yahya.
I'm
taking it for granted.
No, you can't do that, because obviously Yahya says, I'll help you get better work as her assistant.
Yeah, well, my take there is that she would have been incredibly offended by the suggestion of being her assistant.
Well, no, because she stops moving forward then.
Yeah, well, I think she's just kind of like, I think she's listening at first.
Well, the whole fucking point is she's wondering at the end. I don't know, like, this is just standard stuff. She's walking forward. She's going to kill her.
But then, so as far as I know, Yahya just says Abigail, and then she stops. Like, she doesn't stop at the exact moment she says, "Oh, I'll let you be my assistant."
Well, it doesn't matter. The point is, like, the ending shot of Abigail standing still with the rock, like questioning whether she should, you know, accept Yahya's proposal or kill her.
Yeah, but she didn't accept the proposal. She definitely killed her.
Okay, but you're doing this thing again where you're trying to be, you know, funny or whatever. But like, it is genuinely the case. Like, the whole point is definitely. We don't know, and it is ambiguous. That is the point. Is like I think, I don't know why you're so set on this not being ambiguous.
It's just not ambiguous to me. It's just I just feel like you know, the way the movie is, I just feel like, you know, this Abigail woman who's coerced this man into you know, flicking her bean. I just feel like she wouldn't stop at murder.
No, you're right. She wouldn't stop at murder. You're right, but of course, then Yahya then offers her, you know, a way to elevate herself in society, you know, and that makes her stop. And so, yeah, like that's the point. Will she take it? Won't she take it? Like, she's weighing up everything.
Well, more importantly, what do you think about Carl running through the jungle? Like, that's just completely random, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about that. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there was something there. Anyway, let's conclude, because we spent too long on this.
Yeah, I know we did. I think, from my perspective, I viewed it mostly as a silly comedy, and I don't think it had to be intelligent, is essentially my take. I do agree with you.
Well, that's lucky.
Yeah, but like, because with like themes, I do think that obviously sometimes films do need to be subtle and intelligent with their themes. But for me personally, my distinction is that's more for like dramas. Whereas if a film's like, and obviously this film's not like laugh out loud funny, but it's clearly kind of like comedic and absurdist and a bit silly in some areas with like some of the stuff that happens. And within that context, I'm fine with the themes being ham-fisted, because I didn't really expect to go into this film like, what an interesting, subtle nuance. I was like, no, this is a film where a bunch of people throw up and then shit comes out of the toilet. With that said, I actually gave this film, this is what I wrote before we went into discussion. I gave this film a mid-8, a middling 8. That's my opinion.
Well, I'm going to give it a 6.5.
Okay.
Because, again, I'm saying it's fine if it's not subtle. And I guess it's not really fine, honestly. It's a bit shit that things aren't subtle, but there has to be like a plot to go along with it as well. That it's just, this movie is, in some ways, of what it's trying to say, it's clever, but it's just not executed well. It's not cleverly executed. Ruben Östlund had a very clear idea of the things he wanted to say, and he forgot to kind of create a movie along with it. But the reason why it's not lower, why I am giving it 6.5, is in general, like, I do agree with what he's saying, and there are some clever points. It's just not. Again, it's just a movie has to be more to get, like, for instance,
that pizzazz
of an 8.5. So let's go on to Women Talking now, Michael.
Yes.
It's a 2022 drama film directed and written by Sarah Polley, based on the 2018 Canadian novel of the same name. It's we'll get into the movie in a bit, but released on December the 23rd, 2022 in the United States. And what is the box office?
The box office was. Oh wait, what about the budget?
There is no. budget.
Sorry, you said that probably already or something. I don't know.
No, I didn't.
Okay, good. The box office was 10 million.
Oh, close. It's 9. So this wasn't.
Well done me for knowing this would be the lowest rated. Oh, sorry, not lowest rated, lowest box office.
Well, it is an independent movie, so that makes sense. And of course, it was all filmed in the same fucking place. Yeah. So I imagine it wasn't expensive.
Yeah, the budget was a rounding error.
Yeah, it did have Frances McDormand for like 2 scenes. Yeah. Anyway, let us get into this movie.
Because, there are some other films, like Elvis, for example, where it was like, I kind of expected it to be, a dumb, crowd-pleasing movie. And this wasn't dumb or crowd-pleasing. But I thought... So I have like 3 central issues with the film, which, I'm just going to say all 3 of my issues now, and then they're out the way, and anything else you want to say after that. One, I think it's kind of ridiculous, like the entire premise that this is a society where, like, it's obviously really, really sexist, blah, 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 and yet somehow every single woman is completely on board with this, like, female solidarity thing. And I know you're going to say, well, no, but like the entire idea of them getting together and having a vote, like, that's just not how, like, you think about, like, actual kind of, like, the women's suffragette movement where, like, there were women who just didn't think women should have the vote. So it's like this idea that in this society, which is institutionally sexist, that every woman's just going to be like, let's all have a discussion as women about what we're going to do about the men. I just thought that was like a weird premise where it's like, no, there'd be women who would just be like, no, we absolutely cannot even talk about or even begin to consider countenancing. So I thought that premise was whack. And 2, the fact that this was about such an obscure religious cult means I don't know that this necessarily had that much valid to say thematically about society, because it's kind of like, hey, you know what? I think men drugging us with cow tranquilizer and raping us is bad. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That is bad. But I feel like it's so far removed from actual society.
I'll cut you off there. This is obviously a metaphor for Hollywood. It is an incredibly obvious metaphor for Hollywood, and indeed, like,
Harvey Weinstein.
The Me Too movement in general, or the response to what was happening in Hollywood was the Me Too movement, and indeed, like, of course, this is why this movie, I think, was made, but it is actually based on a true story.
And then my third and final point was that I didn't think it was very morally interesting, because obviously the bad guys in the movie are just so evil. So I wasn't like, I wasn't invested in the moral nuance. And those are my 3 main issues.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was. It was women talking.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, I will say I'm glad this was the shortest movie of all of them.
You're right. I agree with what you said. I think it was kind of interesting, but not really, because as you said, it's like, the bad guys, well, obviously you should leave.
Yeah.
If you stay and fight, well, that's pointless.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's kind of like, basically the thing is, if they didn't leave, it would just be because, like, of kind of brainwashing. And it's like, obviously I get that, but it's not... and I kind of, like, there are movies about people in cults, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but it's very difficult to connect to someone who's literally been brainwashed, because usually if you're going to watch, like, someone make a decision, you kind of have to relate to it. But in this case, they're like, no, because if we leave this, like, crazy society where we get, like, raped institutionally, then we'll be kicked out of, like, heaven and stuff. And it's like, well, 99.999% of the world doesn't believe that, so...
Yeah, but that's the thing, like, these cult members, because it is a cult, it's obvious.
That's a bit judgmental.
These people in a cult are arguing whether they should leave the cult. They should do it anyway. After the cults, some members of the cult have basically raped them. You should probably leave. But anyway, the thing is, yes, it is. Some of the discussions are interesting, so we'll get into it. So The film follows a group of Mennonite women who discuss their future following their discovery of the men's
More like
history
women at night.
of raping the colony's women. So yeah, basically, the attackers are arrested and imprisoned in a nearby city, and they have to decide what to do in the 2 days that they have. And yeah, it's based on the gas-facilitated rapes that took place on the Manitoba colony, a remote and isolated Mennonite community in Bolivia.
Bolivia?
Between 2005 and 2009, over 100 girls and women in the colony woke up to discover they had been raped. So the fact that it happened is intriguing, I think, because I initially thought, is this a true story? And it is. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, it's wild that it happened, or like the film has said. I didn't remember what time you said. Oh, you said 2008. It really happened. Like, that's the crazy thing that obviously happened at time close to current.
Yeah, 2005 to 2009. But I did think, so that's intriguing because it's like, okay, so this actually happened. So what I'm watching are the consequences of something that, this could actually, because it is incredibly far-fetched, but okay, it happened, so okay, fine, right, I'm on board now. But I don't know why not set this in Bolivia, because it feels wrong to kind of transplant this trauma to like American.
Yeah, well, it's because they didn't want Donald Trump and his, they're not sending their best narratives to have any water.
The toxic masculinity, the patriarchy, again, it's just very obvious. Basically, they must decide whether to stay and do nothing, or stay and fight, or leave. So yeah, it is kind of an interesting premise. It's set up very quickly, but I think that's because they didn't want any men in the movie who weren't that August guy. So that's why they had to leave right away.
Yeah, because obviously it's kind of like, like the amount of stuff the fact the movie literally just has to be about women talking. Like, definitely they could have paced the movie a little bit better if they had something at the beginning, but I kind of get what you're saying there of like they didn't want to, like they wanted the men to be like kind of more of an abstract idea almost.
Yeah. So we'll get into the women now. So Salome remains adamant about staying and fighting, an opinion shared by Mejel. See if you remember these names,
Nope.
Michael. Ona suggests they stay. I think the names are so weird. Ona suggests they stay, and after winning the fight, creates a new set of rules for the colony that would give the women equality.
Yeah.
Mariche, Greta's daughter, and Adjute's mother disagree, believing that forgiveness is the only option. So yeah, it is hard to keep track because of their weird names, the conversation,
and the fact they're all wearing hats.
The conversation is just all over the place as well. Like they quickly move on from one subject to another. And then, so they have a break, and then afterwards the meeting resumes, and Ona and Mejel change their minds in favour of leaving. Salome wants to fight, stating she would rather kill the men than put her daughter at risk. And they change their minds, so again, like, that's the thing. Initially I was like, wait, who's arguing for who? Or for what? And then they change their minds. So it's just hard to keep up with it all. And they've all got weird names, which I can't remember.
Yeah.
Here's another problem that I have. I don't know if you mentioned this at the start, sorry, but all the women really, well, a lot of them speak very eloquently. And that, of course, is fine. But of course, the big why August is there in the room is because these women do not know how to read and write.
I'm 100%. Yeah, I didn't mention that, but that's something else I was thinking too. Like, these women are like delivering like these feminist treatises.
Yes, and they don't know, because that's the thing. When I first heard in the movie say, oh yeah, we need August to record the minutes so that, because the women don't know how to write or read, I was like, okay, that makes sense why he would be in here. And of course that makes sense because it's obviously a very patriarchal community where women have no power. So okay, they can't read and write, but then they're just so eloquent in what they say.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes they're quoting the Bible, so I can forgive them for being eloquent then. But especially Ona, that girl, like, she's just fucking so intelligent and so smart, and it's just like, how are you trapped in this cult in this colony, and how are you like speaking like this? It just doesn't make any sense. I was expecting them to like not be so specific with the points that they were making, and so eloquent, but it was just women who have had all power taken away from them, just with their limited vocabulary, their limited skills, eventually coming to the realization they should leave. Eventually coming to this feminist position just through working out
I'm with you, like,
in a very primitive, underdeveloped way. But it just wasn't that. It was just I was like, Jesus, these women are fucking smart, which again should not be the case because
they shouldn't be allowed to read.
Go on.
So
say that.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm with you though, like, basically, and that's actually a good point. That's like kind of building on my point in a good way, Luke. You know what? You are valid with that because like the fact that they kind of start off with full-on like feminist theory and like they're straight up coming up with like treatises on like women's equality and stuff like that. yeah, like if they would have instead kind of come up with it in a bit more of a bare bones way, where they just started off with like,
Yes.
basic principles of we would like to not be raped, please, and then that they kind of extend from that into something else. That would work better instead of like right out the gate. They're all kind of acting like it's basically this. It kind of feels a bit liberal in that it's like this fantasy where like systems of oppression don't actually impact people's minds, and that like instead like individuals who are subject to this systemic oppression can just decide to suddenly have access to all these like liberal ideas of gender equality and stuff like that. Whereas like just as soon as these, like I say, really repressed women in this sexist cult, as soon as they get together, they're immediately like, all right, feminism, let's make sure women get equal pay in Hollywood. Why wasn't Greta Gerwig nominated for Best Director?
Yeah, again, it's so clear that the women who wrote this are like, fucking liberally educated,
which we think is fine.
Yes, which is fine, but it just doesn't feel genuine at all, and it's just like, oh, fucking hell, put aside your feelings on men and how eloquent you are. Well, don't put aside your feelings on men. Put aside what you say about men with your eloquence, and instead try to think about what these women might be saying with their limited, I guess, knowledge of the world in general. And that's the thing. You have like Ona is like a third wave feminist.
Yes,
that's what it feels like. It's just like there's no way this character is realistic. I'm not buying it at all. So that was frustrating. And yeah, obviously at the end we have Marish, the one that's unconvinced, and then an argument ensues between her and the rest of the women, and it's revealed she forgave her husband's abuse at Greta's urging. This is this is her mother, I think. After Greta apologizes, Marish agrees to leave. Again, so that's I guess a point, which I like. Yeah, women uphold the patriarchy too. In Hollywood as well. They play a role, and when she says no, I was wrong, because she's like the matriarch, she's literally her mother, that gives her permission to be like, okay, let's leave. So yeah, again, it's not just about the men who need to change, it's about the women as well. The men mainly, but also the women, of course. Yeah, and again, they decide to try and take boys aged 15 years or younger with them. See, I found this part interesting, like discussing, more than just, whether they should go or leave. Once they decide to leave, what to do with the boys 15 or younger. And yeah, basically you have to teach them. They're at that age where basically you have to teach them, and that's the point that was being made by August. It's like they can be better, but they might not be, but they need to learn. And that of course is it's something that I agree with, but it's just a bit more explicit, of course, in this movie. But yeah, again, how do you get out of this cycle? It's about teaching, Michael. It's about education. Yes. Critics said this movie was a powerful act of nonviolent protest. Sometimes later, of course, Ona's newborn baby is shown, and basically, it's going to be a different world from the life she lived. Again, it's a very distressing movie at times because of the topics that are brought up. But at the end of the movie,
yes, it's got a message of hope.
Yeah, it's a hopeful message. Women forging their own path, and it's hopeful because of the fact that they managed to be successful with this non-violent act of protest. So it's a good ending, I guess, because I did wonder whether the men were going to come back and there's going to be like some violence.
Yeah, I was hoping there'd be a bigger action scene.
There's no men in this movie.
I was hoping the girl bosses would beat up the men.
I thought, what I thought was going to happen? I thought August was maybe going to shoot like Klaus, her husband.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Obviously, she's given a gun at one point, so yeah.
Yeah, well, he was going to do it, and it was symbolic of like, hey, men have to stand up against toxic masculinity. Men have to do the work as well.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You know what? I forgot that August was a guy because he's got a girl's name.
Oh yeah. So yeah, August shoots Klaus. Yeah. So men have to play. Women can't just forge their own path, although they need to do that, of course. And but
everyone's got to do that bit.
Yeah, so that's that. So I did like some of the end, although I think it could have been maybe a bit better. But yeah, anyway, what's your rating for?
So like for me, this was the most bored out of all of the films we saw. This was the most bored I was, which is terrible because I know it's called Women Talking. But yeah, for me, I think I've justified why it is I had an issue with this film. I'm only going to give it a high 5, which means it's technically better than average, but I really like, of all the films we've reviewed, this is the one that I would least have any interest in watching again. I feel like it was a film that didn't really have that much to offer. So yeah, high 5.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, what did you give it out of 10?
High 5.
Okay, high 5. I gave a 6. This is 6.5 out of 10. Again, I thought some of the discussions at the end were interesting, but yeah, throughout the movie, I was just kind of frustrated with the arguments in general, not following things really. I think those arguments, when they're listing the pros and cons, it could have been better. And yeah, overall, like, yes, of course, I think yes, it's unrealistic how eloquent the women were, considering they can't read or write. I'm going to say this, Michael, was, on the same level of Triangle of Sadness. So let's move on to the last one, All Quiet on the Western Front. So this, of course, is a remake, All Quiet on the Western Front. Yes, it was released in 2022. It's a German movie, an epic anti-war film. Wait, this was anti-war? Based on the 1929 novel of the same name, and it's the third film adaptation after the 1930 and 79 versions. It is directed by Edward Berger.
Edward Berger.
B-E. And it stars Felix Kammerer.
He was born to work in the movie industry.
Kammerer, Albrecht Schuck, and Daniel Brühl, among others. It was released on October the 28th, 2022 on Netflix. And yeah, obviously it's a German movie. The language is German. Don't know the box office. Well, there isn't any. What's the budget?
35 million.
$20 million. Not even euros. So, Michael, did you like All Quiet on the Western Front, our final movie?
Yeah, so since we're all very tired, we all want to go home to our families, I'll try to distill my overall concern right out the gate, which is, I've seen the original movie, and my question is, you've made a remake. Does this supersede the original or in any way justify its own existence? And my answer to that question is no, not really. The original is probably one of the movies that really stands out as being ahead of its time.
Sorry, are you talking about the
1931? Yeah.
Okay. I have not seen that.
Yeah, it's actually really good. I would recommend it. Basically, I'll just summarize the basic difference. This is the key difference. In the 1931, about halfway through, the war ends, and the rest of the movie is about the soldiers struggling with life after the war. It's really, it's a really solid movie, and you would not believe it was made in the 1930s, considering how just generally good it is. This movie, basically, with that context in mind, it makes this movie worse because it basically just takes that and pretty much turns it into a generic war movie. It has one of the things I was thinking is with World War One, there's a very obvious thing to say, which is the war was bad because lots of people died. And the question then becomes, how many new interesting ways are there to say that? And I don't think this film really discovers any new way of communicating that. And that's my main issue. It's generically entertaining as a war movie, but that's probably not a good thing to be saying about a movie that's supposed to be anti-war, as you kind of alluded to with your intro.
Yeah, I thought that those scenes were good, but yeah, obviously, it's about an idealistic young German soldier, who finds himself exposed to the realities of war, shattering his hopes of becoming a hero. And it's just this is every war movie. Every war movie is an anti-war movie.
Yeah.
And I think this maybe got a nomination for Best Picture because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Yeah. This movie came out 6 months later, and it's oh yeah, remember when people were really big on that invasion and were really anti-war? Nowadays, people in Hollywood aren't so anti-war for some reason. But anyway, yeah, this film, I think, did you mention that, of course, adds the storyline not found in the book, which follows negotiations to end the war.
Yeah.
Which, of course, I liked. I liked that, and I liked some of the scenes in the movie, but overall it wasn't great. And the thing is, I compare it to 1917. 1917, I think, didn't have some of these elements which made this movie better. So it is better than 1917.
Yeah, I think the thing about 1917, and not to make this review of 1917, but the thing I didn't like about 1917 was the whole gimmick thing. This movie is different in that regard.
Yeah, and it is better even taking out the gimmick thing. So yeah, obviously, let's start at the beginning. Paul Balmer enlists in the German army. He listens to a patriotic speech by a school official, and receives uniforms from soldiers killed in a previous battle. I was just oh yeah, look at that. One of the major things we know about World War One, the enthusiasm of youth, the ridiculous speeches, and then of course it all comes tumbling down when you actually get out there. So Paul's romantic view of war is shattered by the realities of trench warfare. Wow, who can imagine? It's just it just hits all the beats. Was this movie necessary? As you said, it wasn't. Obviously. Paul and his friends go on a mission to find 60 missing recruits and discover that they were killed by gas after taking off their masks too soon. By the way, was that in the original?
I will say this: I don't remember the original in a lot of detail. But I don't think. I think basically it's similar. I think this basically the specific beats of what happens are different in that Like, but essentially both of them communicate the same idea of, oh, people die, isn't that terrible? But I think they choose different avenues to go down in terms of how people die.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And yeah, obviously it's a good moment because I think of how just horrifying it is. And that's like, oh, I haven't seen that in 1917, for instance. So Kat gets Paul to read him a letter from his wife. Oh, this is one of his friends. Because he thinks he won't be able to reintegrate into peacetime society. And I honestly thought the movie would go into this after the war.
Yes, which is
does the original.
So yes,
movie
that's
do
what the original does. The original has scenes of the main character being told that he's a hero, and he's like freaking out. Like there are like loads of Germans walking up like, "You're a hero," we're really proud of you. And he like basically has a mental breakdown because he knows that the war was pointless.
Yes, yeah, okay. I was expecting that. Of course, that never happens because maybe it's they couldn't include that because they also wanted to include the negotiation storyline, the armistice.
Yeah, I do have a negative about it's not specifically related to that, but I thought that the I get that they do it and like it's a thing that people want to do, but the whole like the generals are really fat and greedy and look at them in their comfy mansions. I understand that was like a reality.
Yeah, it's obvious.
But yeah, it's very kind of cliche.
Heavy-handed, yes, which is a criticism with a lot of these movies, honestly.
It reminds me of like the classic example is in Return of the King when they're like charging and you just see Denethor like eating his feast with his fat, greasy hands.
Yeah. That's directed very well, though. Anyway, so General Friedrichs, who opposed the armistice talks, orders an attack before French reinforcements arrive. And you can see in the general speech, of course, hints of Nazism.
Yes.
Which I kind of like. Not too on the nose, I think, thankfully. So this guy, Erzberger, played by Daniel Brühl, his delegation reaches Compiègne, and Ferdinand Foch, that's his name, Foch, gives the Germans 72 hours to accept the non-negotiable Allied terms. Yeah, I don't know. I found this part interesting, this storyline interesting, because, it's not in 1917, of course. It's not in... And I didn't know a lot about this, so it's just kind of interesting, So yeah, that's all I got to say about that. It's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Like the politics of how the war ended. I mean, honestly, like I would happily watch a movie that was more about that and just like looking at the perspective of different people involved.
Do you have a problem though? One of the Daniel Brühl says this will be a hated piece, and that kind of implies, oh yeah, it's your fault for the Nazis, not us. This is a German movie, of course, so the Germans still getting one last dig in.
Yeah, damn Germans.
Fucking.
We need another war too.
I agree. Let's kill them. No, they are like the worst. They're the worst country.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that from a right wing.
You're saying it because they support Israel right now.
Yes, they support it. Yes, exactly.
I saw like a tweet that was like Germany and being on the wrong side of history name a better or like a more iconic duo.
They just love that shit. They're just so obnoxious with it as well because they genuinely feel like they're on the right side. Like, no.
Maybe they're on the Reich side.
It's like because they did the Holocaust, therefore you should listen to us when it comes to
genocide. Yeah, they're like, no,
that's not how it works. I'm a
genocide expert myself.
Yeah, exactly. It's fuck. No, that's not how it works, lads. So Paul's regiment is sent to the front line to attack the French lines. They take the French front line after hand-to-hand fighting, but are routed by a counterattack which French tanks are used. So the thing is, this was interesting because it's horrible because of the flamethrowers and the tank blasting a guy, but it's a great scene and it's showing World War I combat as it genuinely was because I know how important tanks were for the British, the French. They basically won the war. So yeah, it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, I will say like I don't know if it's like completely accurate the way it comes in waves because one of the things I do know about tanks is that early on there was an issue where the tanks went way far ahead of the infantry, and that was a problem because the tanks needed infantry support so that someone couldn't just run up to the tanks and throw a grenade in there. So that was one of the problems with tanks early on. So I suspect that by 1918, they were probably doing much more kind of combined arms offensives where they wouldn't just have tanks going forward without infantry support, which is like, that would be something where if we were doing nitpicks, which of course we haven't done because there's no time, I probably would put that as a nitpick. But since you mentioned it, but obviously, yeah, tanks being a big deal is, of course, valid. But yeah, I was thinking to myself, like, I'm pretty sure by this point they'd worked out that just having tanks on their own wasn't great because, yeah, obviously what we see is someone just runs up and tanks aren't very good at, like, dealing with soldiers kind of swarming them because, they're not very mobile and throws a grenade in there. But yeah, still, I think it's a very... The warfare is visceral and, yeah, not hard to show trench combat as pretty horrible. It's kind of funny because like a lot of the time in movies it's annoying when no one dies because it feels like there's no tension. This movie almost got to a point where I was like, it feels like there's no tension because everybody dies. Like that was kind of, I thought, I was like, hold on, every single character has died in this movie, which I understand, like the war, blah blah blah, but in terms of tension I was like, it's kind of a, like when like occasionally you have a shocking death it can really drive points home, but when everybody's dying you're kind of like, okay, I'm just
General Friedrichs, who wants to end the war with a German victory, orders an attack to start at 10:45 a.m. Did this happen? I don't think so, right?
As far as I know, so one of the things I do know is that they did, like, there was fighting that went on right until armistice, but not, like, specifically ordered attacks.
I don't think, like, that's the thing, I don't think the soldiers would have gone and done it. Like, there would have been a mutiny, you know? Yeah, like, oh, you're shooting some of them. Okay, if that are saying
there would have been like that. You can't shoot all of them.
Yeah, exactly. There's more soldiers than there are, you know, fucking
military
officers.
police.
So yeah. Obviously, then he. I like how Paul is basically evil at the end. That's his character arc. You know, war has not made him honorable, but filled him with hate. And of course, he's killed seconds before 11 a.m. Just another pointless death in a pointless war. So I kind of like the ending in that regard. But yeah, overall, I'll just say it's better than 1917, I think. I gave 1917 a 7.5, and that's the thing. I think this movie, honestly, is only a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave 1917. I think I gave 1917 like as low as like a 6 or something because I'm just mean.
That makes sense. Maybe I have to see it again, but I just have bad memories of that. Maybe they're unjustified. But yeah, this is getting a 7 out of 10.
So for me, a pretty similar score. I'm giving it a mid 6. But again, that kind of makes sense because I have a more direct memory of the original. And of course, like I say, the funny thing is, if this movie was just called, like, it had some other generic name that didn't associate it with All Quiet on the Western Front, I might actually regard it better. But, you know, context matters. And the fact that this is a movie that is a remake of a pretty great movie from the 1930s and it sort of fails to advance on the original and arguably is significantly diminishes some of the good parts of the original, I think that's got to count against it quite a bit. So mid 6.
Yes. But yeah, I think Tar should have won Best Picture last year. Interestingly, this is interesting. So the 2023 Oscar movies, I gave an average score of 7.45 out of 10. And I just wanted to compare it to last year because I remember the 2022 Oscars. I felt they were very underwhelming. The Best Picture nominees, and indeed, I gave an average score of 7.05 out of 10 to those 10.
You know what, Luke, I'm going to tell you what my
really
I can really easily. I just need to do it. Okay, so my average was for this year, is 6.75.
This year's 2023 Oscars, movies that were nominated for Best Picture significantly, quite a lot better than the 2022 Oscars. Of course, Coda won Best Picture at the 2022 Oscars.
2022 Oscars.
Coda got like a 6 out of 10 from me, and somehow won Best Picture. But anyway, that's it, Michael. We are done looking at last year's Oscars, and we will return in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, bye everyone.